Hey everyone, welcome to the Leadership Network Generation Next show. We're super excited for today. We have some incredible guests on our show today, Landon and Brooke. We're going to be talking all things church planning.
That's right.
All things church planning for the next gen, all things future church planning. And I'm super excited for this convo.
Yeah, it's going to be so great. This is the first of 4 conversations we're having in a brand new series that we're launching here on the Generation Next show, focusing on next gen church planters. You know, Aaron and I talk a lot with church leaders, and they're asking those questions. Are anybody in the next generation interested in planting churches? And we have the amazing opportunity of having some friends who are doing amazing work, planting churches, birthing visions, all different corners of this country with really unique vision to reach their environments. And so we thought, how cool would it be to feature them on this show over the next 4 weeks?
Yeah. So we're going to dive into some really great conversations. We're going to be talking about vision today. Landon and Brooke, I would love for you all to just introduce yourselves and let our viewers know who you all are, where you're from, etc.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm Landon Hairgrove.
I'm Brooke Hairgrove.
And we live in Boise, Idaho. So we're originally from Colorado. We both grew up there. We're high school sweethearts. We've been married for 8 years. We got 3 kids. And live in Boise, Idaho now. We moved here 7 months ago to get ready to plant Oasis City Church. And so we're super, super excited about what God is doing in the Treasure Valley and getting to play a small part in that. So
come on.
This is so
awesome.
This is so awesome.
No kidding.
Well, hey guys, question. I think in today's culture, a lot of people are talking about like, where is the future of the church headed when it comes down to future church plants? And I would love to talk about real quick, like your vision or story on church planting. Where did you guys feel, where and when did you all feel called to plant a church? Maybe the backstory behind it all.
Yeah. I guess I'll start and then you can jump in.
Yeah.
But for me, like I grew up with an understanding of kind of who God was. So it was for me, I was about 5. I went to church. My grandfather was an itinerant pastor and speaker, ended up moving his ministry down to Texas and was doing men's ministry out of there. So I kind of fell away from church for a long time, all the way through basically, until I was about 17 years old. And when I was 17, got saved, just had a radical encounter with God and started listening actually to a guy's podcast that really kind of challenged me to grow. My aunt had sent me this podcast, started listening to it. And that was kind of like the start of my faith journey. And for me, it was really early on that I felt called to plant. I had actually met Brooke when I was 18 years old, still kind of crazy, still kind of walking the line of the world and following God. And I met her and she told me, hey, if you're going to be around me, I love God, I love my family, you got to come to church with me on Sundays. So I was like, absolutely. I want to be around you. And went to church with her. At this church, it was probably 6 months into being at the church that we really like together kind of sensed this like that God was doing something and felt this kind of call to ministry. And we didn't quite know what it looked like at the time, but we started to kind of pray through and talk about what it would look like to go into ministry. And God just really from the beginning started birthing this idea that we were going to do this someday. Like when we would sit in the congregation and look at what's this pastor that's leading in this church that's flourishing and growing. And we just felt like, I think we're supposed to do this. So that was more than 10 years ago now that we like really just kind of like got this vision in our heart of like, I think this is something that we're supposed to help cultivate in a community. And so for us, we've been for the last 10 years traveling around, visiting places we thought we may plant. Like, where have we gone?
We've gone all over the place. And every vacation, even if we were at like a beach location, Landon would be like, man, God, are we going to have a surf church?
I really wanted to be like a beach church, like really bad.
I'm really hoping.
I asked God to send me to Hawaii and I always get put back by the mountains, just what happens. But we had like wrestled through that, like all these different places, never really felt the yes or the drawing from God of like, this is a place we could plant. But then in 2020, you guys know, like they dubbed it the Great Resignation, right? Like, everyone was quitting their jobs and moving, and we looked at Facebook and it was like, man, everybody's just leaving wherever they are. So we started to kind of like just ask the question, where are people going? And we started doing some research on Boise.
Yeah. And so when we started to look at where people were going, we looked at the fastest growing cities of the year. And as we were going through the list, I think it was like number 6 was Boise.
Mhm.
And when we were reading through it together, we got to number 6, we got to Boise, and it was like something leapt in our spirits. We both looked at each other and we were like, whoa, what's Boise? All we know about Boise is potatoes. Like you hear Idaho, you hear potatoes. We hadn't even met anyone from
Wow.
Idaho before. But there was something there, and for us to both feel it was so powerful. And so we were like, okay, well, let's just pray about that one. Like there was something there.
Yeah.
So for the next few months, we just started to really intentionally take time to pray. If that's where God was leading us, if there was anything there. And you hear those coincidental stories of God showing up in different ways, and that's totally what happened for us.
I mean, like, when she talks about the coincidental stories, it's like, it's the crazy things. Like I was actually preaching at a church in Lubbock, Texas. And so I was at the airport, Denver airport, getting ready to fly to Lubbock. There's like an area of the airport where all the small kind of airports fly from and to. And while I'm sitting there, my gate changed to Boise the week after we had started praying about this. Like, it's just like super weird. So then we go probably 2 weeks later, go to breakfast in Loveland, Colorado. This guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, I think we went to college together. Turns out he went to college out here. So it's just like weird, just coincidence over and over again. We were in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, sitting on the bus that takes you back to the airport with a couple from Coeur d'Alene, Twin Falls, Idaho, and Boise, all separate couples, all right around us on the same bus. Never met anyone from Idaho. So we kind of just kept getting this, like our attention kept getting grabbed by this idea of Idaho, of Meridian, of the Treasure Valley area. And so as we kind of wrestled with what are you doing, God? Our pastor at the time at the church we were at had given everyone a week off. It was in 2021. He was like, hey, 2020 was rough. This year we're giving you like an extra week of PTO, which was super cool. So we took that week and we actually used it to go to Boise. And so we went and we just asked families, what do you guys do for fun? So we go to the state park, we go to the zoo, we do this. So we did all those things. Brooke took the kids for a good portion of a day, allowed me to go by myself in a city, find a coffee in the city, find a coffee shop, pray. I did the same thing for Brooke, where I took the kids and let her go by herself to a coffee shop and pray. Both felt confirmation. That's the first time I was sitting at that coffee shop when I really felt the Lord challenge me to step out and to actually do this, to plant, and spoke to me the word oasis. That was the first time I heard oasis. And so for me at first, it was very much a natural understanding. It's kind of like John 4, the woman at the well. Her understanding of Jesus was like, just a dude that can help me, all the way to the Messiah. And it's kind of this transitionary moment. That's what it was for me. Like when I heard oasis in my heart, I really felt like, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like Boise's the high desert area. It's very Red Rock, Utah looking, all the way up until you hit Boise. Boise actually means wooded. They call it the city of trees. There's a river that stretches from Boise to Garden City to Meridian and Nampa. And so for me, it was like, wow, that's a super cool name, because as soon as you hit Boise, it's trees everywhere. It's super green. It looks like an oasis. Back during the gold rush, back in the day, the pioneers, this really was like an oasis city where people would come. And it's just, man, it really is a cool name. And so I was like, all right, awesome. But God really started to kind of reveal the spiritual implications of what that word means. It's a fertile spot in the desert where water is found. It's a place of refreshing. And I felt like God challenged us to make our church a place of refreshing and healing and hope and renewal for the city of Boise. And that would continue to not just be our church, but as our church launches small groups and campuses or other churches, that they would then be their own oasis in their neighborhood, in their home, and that the same hope and refreshing healing they experience at church, they can experience in these people's homes. And this can really be a movement throughout the Treasure Valley.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just think, this vision reaches all because Jesus is the living water and he refreshes us all. It doesn't matter where you are on your walk, whether you're a wanderer and you haven't ever met him yet, or if you do have a relationship with him, you need daily refreshment from him. And so we're really grateful that God's been so clear and given us such a passion for the city. When we moved here, I'll say that was another huge confirmation. Just God's peace here, when we like actually moved and started to plant roots here, we were like, okay, Lord, we love these people. We love this city. Thank you for making it so
Wow.
obvious we're
Right.
called here.
Yes.
Wow.
It's been really beautiful. Like the core kind of statement for our church is we want to be an oasis for the wanderer. And we really feel like that's who we're called to is the wanderers, these people that are gifted with grit but lack purpose and direction for their lives, the pioneers, the entrepreneurs. That's kind of the spirit of Idaho. It's a very do-it-yourself, very entrepreneurial vibe here in Idaho. And we really feel called to those people, to these people that are kind of wandering through life, just trying to find their own way. And we really believe that our call as a church is to come help them see that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life, and come alongside them and show them that, hey, that you are gifted with grit, and these things that God has given you are God-given. And that when you put God's purpose behind God's gift on your life, just the exponential power behind that. And so we're excited to see what God's going to do through this church and through the lives that will be changed at this church. And it's really amazing, like just to look back and see where God has kind of brought us over the last like 7 months, as we've kind of gotten to know the culture of the city and really dove into where we want to be, because we really want to be reaching a specific audience, right? So we're trying to like plant ourselves right in the middle of one of the fastest growing suburbs in the community and downtown. So downtown is like young professionals. It's really being revitalized. It's super cool. Boise State University is down there, tons of young adults. Then we have Meridian, which is like this, pop-in suburb. And so we want to plant right in the middle, 10 minutes from downtown, 10 minutes from this suburb, and really reach these young families, these young professionals, and these young pioneers and entrepreneurs.
That's amazing. I'm just so excited. I'm so inspired that people like you are starting churches like that, because I think a lot of times in these conversations around the future of the church, again, we can hear all of the bad news, and that's important for us to talk about. Absolutely. However, there's also amazing people like you who are still getting visions from God about what the future of the church can look like. And you all are doing the hard work to build it. And you both are in your 20s and you're planting church. And I think, again, a lot of the people watching, perhaps you're a senior leader, maybe you've been a pastor for decades, maybe you have so much experience in the ministry world, maybe you are wondering, are there any church planters who are in the next generation? I mean, this is one of the reasons we wanted to have these conversations, is because I think it's important for us to recognize that the church isn't going anywhere. And although it's going to look different, God is still rising up leaders who will build a church for the next generation. So I just want to say, I'm so inspired and encouraged. I believe Boise is going to look more like the kingdom of God because of Oasis Church, and the way that you all lead, the character that you both carry is so beautiful. I want to talk a little bit about being church planners in your 20s who are building a place where I know you want the next generation to feel safe, to feel like they can find that living water, that oasis. When you think about what the next generation is looking for in church, what are some of the things that come to mind?
I think a few different things. I think initially that, obviously people talk about the next generation being skeptical all the time, and this idea of the next generation being a little standoffish in some ways, but it's like, I think that's because they've seen a model of church, or they've seen a type of church that is being the church. I think, for us, we were doing some advertising on social media for the church and just kind of casting some vision. And we had a couple people that are like in the area that jumped on there and brought some kind of negativity to the page. And we were like, man, like, okay, like there's some pushback. And one of the things they said was, we don't need another corporate church that's just the cookie cutter model that's coming to the Valley. And so we got an opportunity to really share why we're not that. But I do think that there's been some maybe burn for these young generations, because they look at, are you really coming here because you're here for us, or are you here to build a brand? Are you here to build an empire? Are you here to build? And so I think for the next generation, they want to see that you're real. They want to see that you're authentic. They want to see that you're a church that is going to be about, like, for us, like one of the things that we want to kind of make a core statement of who our church is presence driven and theologically robust.
Wow.
Meaning, We
Wow.
prioritize everything around the presence of God, the way that we operate, the way that we structure a Sunday morning. We want to build our church around hosting the presence of God and making sure that that is our primary goal. And this is what we see according to scripture, is that there's really a three-legged chair that, or a three-legged stool that holds up the church. It's the idea of hosting the presence of God, gathering with other believers to worship God corporately, right? And then this idea of equipping the saints, so helping people get plugged in, helping them know how they actually can go and do ministry themselves, that they're not just being consumers, but they're actually going out and bringing outcome. Like they're not just sitting in church and getting this, but they're actually bringing it to their communities. And then third is evangelization of the world, right? That's going out and reaching people, reaching the lost. And so these three things should feed each other in a healthy church culture. You should have a place where the presence of God is felt and it's experienced, and that we can come together corporately, that we don't forsake the gathering, but we come and we break bread together, we do life together, but then that they're equipped, that we don't just give them shallow teaching. I think the next generation sees that there has been a movement in the past where we went really wide but an inch deep, and that's not what the next generation is about. And so for our church, our goal is to be wide and deep. Now that is a difficult task to accomplish. There's a reason why they didn't do it, because it's hard. And so for us, when we say presence driven, theologically robust, it's presence driven Sunday morning services, experiences, but we want to have spaces and places where theology and doctrine and these things that, like, we have to know, why do we raise our hands? Why do we baptize? Why is that important? And having these spaces that we can have these conversations and bring challenge and talk about the hard issues. Like, we want to talk about everything from sin to salvation, justification, like we want to roll through everything and not leave something out. Like, if you don't talk about sin, man, you rob people of the power of grace. So we have to bring this kind of like holistic approach into, especially when you're trying to reach next generation, you have to bring this holistic approach that says, hey, we're willing to have hard conversations, and we're willing to wrestle with God, because I do believe that's what the next generation wants. They want to wrestle with God, and they're okay with coming out limping. And that's just where we're at.
Yeah. And I would just say, to add to that, I think what we see a lot of times, and maybe where that skepticism comes from, is when we're not operating in all three of those areas and we overemphasize one of them, it leaves room for a lot to go awry. And so while we may be going wide a lot of times by focusing on, the evangelizing to the world, Matthew 28, which is so important, but we're not going deep and being trained up. We're not encountering God and worshiping him. We're not planting roots. And so that can leave a lot of fallout. So if you look at each one of those things, if there's an overemphasis on something and it causes a lack in the other, I think that's where we can really start to make people question, like, do I belong here? Is this legitimate, or is this just a nice nonprofit that's run for my consumption? Called to so much more.
Yes.
Wow. And I think the beauty of the next generation is, like you talked about, Landon, is they want to see if we're authentic, right? They're missional minded. They want to go and build with us, not just observe us building. And I would love to talk about that tension, because I think I heard pastor say, like, dreaming up the dream is different than living out the dream, right? And so we can craft great vision for the future of the church, because it's what God has been speaking to us privately about. But how it outworks itself, like you said, Brooke, could be, we're really great in this area, but we're lacking in that. And so I would love to talk about that tension when it comes down to crafting a great vision for your church so it's effective. Because we don't want to just plant churches. We want to plant churches that are effective in our communities. And so I would love to have you all talk about, how do we plant effective churches with the tension of, we don't want to be great in one area, but maybe loose in another.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say something that we kind of stumbled across when we're planning this out, talking this out. Not only do you have to have a great, compelling vision, but there has to be action steps behind it. There has to be kind of the walkway to get there. And so when we're discussing this, we've kind of come up with strategy behind the vision. And it again is 3 parts. And so the first one is gatherings, because again, scriptural, Ephesians 1, we're called to corporately gather as a church and encounter God. So strategy right there is we will always have a Sunday morning gathering that will always allow an opportunity for people to worship and encounter God. The second piece of that strategy is discipleship. And so we want to create spaces, whether that's through classes or small groups. We're still working out all the details of that, but we want to make sure that that's an emphasis that we will always make available. And the third one, we're calling it community, but really community in a multiplication effort. And so we want to have action steps behind connection and going out together. So I think a huge part of it is that there needs to be action steps. There needs to be a plan, a strategy behind the vision.
Yeah.
Do you want to add?
I would just say too, and it has to include everybody. So people, if they're going to get behind your vision, they have to see their story in your vision. It's easy to take statistics. Like I talk about statistics a lot because Boise is the 28th most unchurched city in the nation. It's the 24th most post-Christian city in the nation. It's a very young city. The average age is of a Boisean is 36 years old. So it's like stats are important, but stats don't move people to action. Stories people to action. So learning how to take your vision or take the vision that God has given you and wrap it in story and help people to see their story play out in your vision, how it will play out in your vision is really important, and something that I think is a really nuanced approach that you have to think through as you cast vision to people. Find a way to plug them into the life and the story of your church and how their story can be a part of making this vision happen. And I think for us, one of the tensions that we faced and some of the feedback that we even had gotten from other planters and people that have been in our shoes, that have more experience than us in this, is how to cast a vision that is attainable for people. Now, what I mean by that is you're supposed to dream God-sized dreams. I want every planter out there to be dreaming a God-sized vision that they cannot fulfill themselves. But it's really it can be almost daunting for people you're casting vision to locally to say, we're going to have a church, we're going to reach 50,000 people in the next 10 years. Like, I love that. If that's your heart, then bro, I'm like, go do it. Let's reach 50,000 people. But don't tell everybody that right now. Like, find a way to cast vision that doesn't have to have a numerical kind of tie to it and has more of, hey, we want to make a legacy in Boise. We want to be a legacy church here where we want to see generations impacted. We want to see the ripple effect of Oasis City Church go on to generations to come. Like, cast vision that they can see and feel without having to put like numerical kind of benchmarks on it to them. Now, internally, you can have goals with your staff and your team and with you and your spouse. But I think telling people we're going to reach 50,000 people doesn't really help anybody. And they're kind of like, man, you're kind of cocky. So you got to wrestle the line of helping people see that we do have a God-sized dream, but it's something that they can kind of wrap their minds around.
Yeah. That's so well said and so important, honestly, because, this is something that I've seen a lot of even people in our generation is we cast this vision so big and we overwhelm everyone around us, even the people who are the mentors who would want to pour into us. And then when they kind of give us that pushback sometimes of, okay, make sure that it's practical and it's attainable and the SMART goals, system that I really believe in. And we wonder, are they pushing back? Do they not believe in us? But in reality, we can, exactly what you're saying, we can have the big vision, but if we're not giving people, right, like if we had showed everybody this huge feast before we give them the first course, they might feel overwhelmed. But if we just give them one course at a time, they can enjoy every bite, right? So I love that. It's so great.
Yeah.
Well,
I love the thought process there. I think it's what you guys are really getting at is like the heart of Jesus, the heart of God. Like, I remember giving my life to the Lord and just being infatuated with Jesus and being a raging evangelist, right? And being consumed to go out into the world and make it look like Jesus. And what's really cool about that is giving your life to Jesus, like you actually see yourself in his story, you know,
Mhm.
what you talked about, Landon. And I think if we don't see ourselves in his story, in his kingdom, what are we doing? Right.
Yes.
And so yeah, I love that. I think it's such a great thought. To that point, I would love to maybe break that down a little bit more.
Yeah.
What about when it comes down to like, I know we kind of touched on it a little bit before about a leader that may be skeptical about the church.
Mhm.
You know, maybe they hear the stories of how they can make a difference in the world. They hear the stories of Jesus, but there's maybe some deep pain, church hurt, etc. How or what would it come when it comes down to Oasis Church? Can we as people separate ourselves by helping people through their pain, through their difficulty, through their trials, through their testing that they've gone through, so we can package church to be a beautiful, compelling heartbeat of Jesus. And so I would love for y'all to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think for me, when it comes to people that have been church hurt or had bad experiences with church or leaders or whatever it might be, it's helping them to see a church that has a vision that has both shared responsibility and a true accountability. Those two things are huge, where it's not just a talking head. It's not just a charismatic personality. This church isn't about a leader. This church is about a community, and more than a community that's focused on worshiping and serving God. And so I honestly think the reason why so many people have gotten church hurt, even in the last few years, is because it has become so much more of a organization than an organism in many ways. And in many ways, we have overemphasized leadership to the point. Now I'm going to put a caveat on this, but like we've overemphasized leadership to the point that discipleship has almost become a secondary thing to leadership. Now, it should be hand in hand. Discipleship and leadership should go hand in hand. But the scary thing is you can build a church on leadership. You can build a good church. Now, by good church, I mean a church that is large, that is effective in an area as far as getting people in seats. And that's scary. That should scare us that as young leaders, that we have the ability to build something without God. That should scare us. And so for me, that does scare me. And I try to keep that in my mind that, hey, I can do things in my own strength. I can do things, but it will never be as good as if I just submit and surrender to God. I may think that it'll be done faster and we'll get there quicker if I just work harder, if I do this, if I pull these people, if I pull in this relationship and this resource and this network and whatever. And I think for us, it's been a constant wrestling and a pause to say, God, is this who you want us to partner with? God, is this what you want us to do? Do you want us to take this speaking engagement? Do you want us to go here? And that's hard. Like that is not an easy thing to do, to pause and be slow. But I think that when we're slow and intentional with how we build, not just our church, but how we structure our lives, all these different things, we move at the pace of Jesus, we move at the pace of grace, right? And it gets to this place where I think we build something that's healthy and not just something that's large. I think that's what the next generation that's been church hurt is looking for. Are you trying to build an empire? Are you trying to build another, like that guy even commented to me, a corporate cookie cutter? Are you trying to build something, or are you truly trying to be the church? Are you trying to be the hands and feet of Jesus? Are you trying to reach your city? Are you trying to be effective in your schools? Are you trying to be are you trying to help families raise their kids in a generation where they're being inundated by culture? Are you helping them navigate through that? And I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, can we be slow? Can we build healthy? Can we do this the right way? And in doing that, I really think that we're going to help those people find healing as we build a church that is focused on the things that Jesus is focused on.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add one thing. This generation coming up is very different from past generations because they view their friends and their coworkers, people around them, as family. This is a new kind of phenomenon where a lot of people in this generation, because of broken families, because of trauma, just difficult backgrounds, they're starting to belong to their friends as if they would belong to family, which is super interesting, and can be a great strength for the future church if we grab a hold of that and provide belonging for these people looking for family. We can be not only a healthy spiritual family, but hopefully bring healing to their background as well. And so I think that's a huge piece in reaching this next generation.
Yeah.
Incredible. Wow. I mean, this is so valuable, both of you. I love your hearts and I love your visions. And this is something that you all have thought through. And even more so, like you have wrestled with this in the spirit, and it's just so beautiful to see it coming to life. And I just can't wait for how many people it's going to impact. We have a couple of questions that have come in, so we're going to go to those really quick. These are really good. There's a person named Hannah who, wow, you have a great name, Hannah, who's watching. I love it. And she said, what prep did you do for the church plant? What did that look like for you? She said cohorts, training, mentors. What did this process look like for you to go from, hey, I think I might want to plant a church one day, to now you're doing?
Awesome.
Yeah, so we did youth ministry for 8 years, which I think youth ministry is the best prep you could do for church planning, because they're crazy, they're wild. Everything goes wrong half the time. There's so it's like it keeps you on your toes in leadership. So we led in youth ministry. We've led in multiple different contexts, from interns to junior high pastors to lead youth pastors over a multi-site church. And then in the midst of that, we did a church planting residency where, in addition to our responsibilities overseeing all of our campuses for youth, I was on a teaching team, and then sitting in all lead team meetings, elders meetings, board meetings, things like that, just getting to see how the church operations actually function. And then in that too, that multi-site church, we got to manage a significantly larger budget than we never managed before, and we're fully responsible for that and for staff members. And so we had three or four stipend, so a couple stipend people, two full-time staff members, a part-timer, and a few others.
Yeah. And then also when we started to have the real conversation of like, okay, is Boise it? Is this the time? All of that. We really invited a lot of wise counsel into our lives. We always had wise counsel, but really started to ask them to pray through it. And just start to prepare ourselves by attending different church planting conferences, by speaking with lead pastors about their journey. We in counseling, it was presented and something that we were walking through with our counselor. And then just recently, we also joined with Stadia Church Planting. They do an assessment process that's pretty rigorous, pretty robust, probably the best thing we could have ever done.
Totally.
Because they really help you from discovery and an exploration phase of, man, I think I'm called to this, but I'm not sure how it's going to practically be lived out. They walk you through every process and really help you determine, is this the right timing? Is this the right place? Do we have the vision that God's really calling us to? All of that. And so, yeah, plug for Stadia.
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend any church planner that feels even remotely like maybe I'm called, go through Stadia's assessment process. I'm telling you, like it was so thorough, so robust, and really it does. They walk you from, I mean, you have to work, like you write papers, you do videos, you do interviews, you do psych evaluations. I mean, they go through, I mean, it's an entire process, but at the end of it, they'll come out with recommendations for how to move forward. The other thing I would say is get people in your life that are smarter and wiser than you. And so for us, like I said, we had some experience managing some larger budgets, but at the same time, we've never done anything at this scale. And so for us, we knew we needed to partner with somebody, and God brought someone into our life. His name is Jim Shepard. So plug for Jim Shepard. I'm telling you, from Generis, absolutely the greatest gift that God has given us in this church planning season has been Jim Shepard. He helped us come up with a 4-year strategy for church planning where we raise 100% of our pre-launch funds, 75% of year one, 50% of year 2 and 25% of year 3, with the idea by year 4, we're totally self-sustaining and self-sufficient as a church. So basically you go from outside investment to internal giving as you disciple people on how to live out kingdom generosity and the idea of tithing over the course of 4 years. Now there's a reason for that. The reason being, you don't have to start a church by just pulling a bunch of people that are already in other churches. Now, of course, when you start a church, you need people that believe in your vision, that are Christians, right? It's kind of hard to start a church unless you got some Christians. But at the same time, you can be reaching people and pulling these lost people into the start of the church, and because you don't need to pull a bunch of church people that already know how to give. So when you can disciple people how to give over 4 years, you can build a sustainable model that allows you to reach your city and to be really impactful in outreach, and to continue to grow as the church by doing a fundraising strategy like this. And so for us, having our budget looked at by a professional, having everything from church salaries, all these different things to be really measured and to be sourced by taking a study of the area. All of this has been super helpful for us to know how to lead a staff well, to know how to build a budget that is appropriate and effective. So absolutely big plug for Generis, Jim Shepherd. If you're a church planner, you need to hit them up.
Yes.
Wow.
We love Jim Shepherd.
Yeah,
He's such a
Jimmy's the
good.
man.
That's really good. I love all the different pieces you touched on. Those are really practical. And I'm sure we'll have the links to Stadia and Generis in the comments as well.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you guys, when God gives you a dream and you're like, yeah, dream has to have actionable steps to it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that you align strategy with passion for what God has placed on your heart. So thanks for walking us through that.
Yeah.
Another question came through is how do you feel like church planning has shifted or changed post pandemic or like cultural shifts? I would love for you guys to maybe touch on that a little bit.
I think one thing for sure is for us, we're in the middle of venue search right now, and I'm a little scared of schools, to be honest. And part of the reason is I have friends that were planting during the pandemic that got kicked out of schools. So when you're thinking through venues, I almost now am running this thing through my mind. If there was a pandemic, would they kick us out? Would they shut us down? And so that's one of my kind of filters when I'm looking at venues now. So that's one kind of practical thing. But I think there's been a lot of shifts even in mentality for church planning, but I'll let you jump in.
Yeah. So there's actually been a few people that, we've met like while our kids are playing at Chick-fil-A or we're at the park or wherever we are. And it comes up that we're planting a church. And several times we've actually gotten the question like, wow, after the pandemic, really? You're going to plant a church?
Wow.
When really, the church is the hope of the world. And what we saw during the pandemic actually is that the only group, when a study was taken, the only group that actually flourished and was emotionally healthier during the pandemic was the church.
Wow.
Whereas every other category kind of fell off. And so just learning that, it just almost, I think for us, emboldens us even more and excites us even more to know that no matter what happens in this country, no matter what happens tomorrow, the church is the hope of the world, and we will shape and shift depending on what does happen, but will remain the church and still feel called to the people of Boise. So I think it's almost, there's a robustness that was built out of the pandemic. And I think just almost a bigger passion.
I think too, there was like an awakening for community in that the importance of the groups and and not just the gathering, but the importance of like the small groups, the infrastructure that you have for connection and community throughout your church. I think that got tested for a lot of churches to see how legit was your group structure and was it really effective? Because when the pandemic hit, the churches that were solid on groups, solid on community, that their church did life together, were the ones that were really able to not just to survive, but to thrive through the pandemic. Those churches, a lot of them saw increases in revenue. Like those churches saw increase in engagement. These churches saw increased engagement online on their online platforms for their messages. So like they saw increases where every other church was seeing decreases. And I believe the reason why is because they had a great strategy for community and for groups. And so I think for us, that is something that we're coming into is going, okay, like if there was for some reason, the large gathering couldn't happen the way that we see it happening on a typical Sunday morning, can we build our church in a way that the people are so connected that they're supporting each other and really being the church, right? Sharing the things that they need. If this pandemic were to go down again or something like that, like, can the church really be the church without having this huge group happening? Like, can the church still function? Can the church still be the church? And can we build in, kind of use technology, obviously, to build strategy into that as well?
That's great.
It's so great. I love this. This has been such an amazing conversation. We'll only have a few more minutes left. But again, I hope that every person watching this right now and this entire series, as we continue to talk to some more couples that are planting churches all over the country, are just reminded that, again, the future of the church will go forth. Exactly what you both said, right? Yes, there is a piece of our generation that is walking away from the church. But there's also part of our generation who is standing up and saying, well, we're going to fight for the part of our generation who's walking away. And there's something so beautiful about seeing that there are individuals just like you both who are taking ownership of what the future of the church looks like and planting in the midst of the unknown and the season of having little kids and being new in a city, and you are still saying, yes, it's so beautiful. I would love to just invite you to share, what's some of your biggest needs or asks? And what I want to ask that question for is because I think it's really helpful for other young church planners, if they're watching this, to know, okay, what are the things that Landon and Brooke are asking for really boldly in this season so that they can know to also ask it. But also, maybe there's a senior leader who's been so moved by this conversation that they're saying, how can I support? How can I be a part of the work that Brandon and Landon and Brooke are doing?
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, there's 3 different ways that I'd say you can help us, partner with us, engage with us. And that's number 1, pray. Like, please pray for us. Like, we know that every miracle we've ever seen in our lives has been because of the prayers that other people have prayed, the prayers that we've prayed. And so please pray for this church, pray for our influence in the valley, pray for our venue. That's a huge one. Pray that God would continue to bring the right people to our team. The second would be to give. If you feel led to give, you can go to oasiscity.church, and there's a button right there, but we're trying to raise a good chunk of money over the next 4 years so that we can do what we feel called to do, which is to reach this valley with the gospel and to empower the next generation by partnering with our schools, by being involved in the community, bringing on staff. We have a huge vision, but we want to see it played out, and we can only do that with Kingdom Resources and people that believe in partnering together to reach people for God's kingdom. And so you can give, and the last is you could go. So if you feel called, maybe you're a young person watching this right now and you're sitting there like, man, I just graduated college, but I don't know what I want to do. Move to Boise. There are literally so many awesome places. Like, this is Boise's goal. Their stated city goal is to be the most livable city in the nation. You can float the river, and there's tubes, and there's a million parks, and downtown is awesome, and there's tons of great restaurants and tons of young people, and just, man, it's such an incredible city. Or if you're a family, it's a great place to raise a family. Incredible place to raise a family. Even for us, got parks all around our house. But come join us in this mission to be an oasis. Come help people experience that refreshing hope and healing. Maybe you're somebody that's experienced the refreshing healing and hope from being in a local church. Come help plant a local church that'll do that and be that for somebody else, and be a part of helping people experience the living water of Jesus. That'd be awesome. So let me know. Shoot me a DM.
Amen. Let's go.
Man, you got me fired up. I might just move out to Boise.
Hey, listen, I'll put you on the team, bro.
Hey, well, we love you guys. This was an incredible conversation. We're about to wrap up, but do you all have any last thoughts? Anything that you would like to, maybe you did touch on that you would like to add real quick about maybe church planting?
I would just say one more thing, and then if you have anything, but If you feel called to plant a church, invite some wise counsel in your life, go through an assessment process like Stadia or something else along those lines. Explore it. Like, don't just shove it down. Like, don't silence that. Explore it. Talk to your pastor, talk to some leaders in your life, because we need you. We need churches. We need healthy churches. And so, yeah, I would just encourage you, if you feel that stirring in your heart, if you're not sure what that looks like, ask your pastor, ask some people around you to speak into it, and just explore it and pray into it.
So
Yeah, and I would just add to that, this process has been so exciting, also nerve-wracking, a lot of faith, a faith walk, I should say. And so, like Landon said, just invite people into your life who are going to speak truth, who are going to bring wise counsel. And if we can be of any help to you, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk further and encourage you in whatever God's calling you to.
Yeah, totally. I heard there was a saying that I saw online the other day that was basically said, a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. So anything that we have that we can give you, any resource, any relationship, anything that we have, we want to resource you guys with. And you too, Aaron and Hannah, thank you guys so much for hosting and for just being such a light in this generation, and that you guys are really doing such a good job of just lighting a fire and a passion in so many people. And you guys, I know you're inspiring so many people through Generation Distinct and just what you guys do as leaders throughout the nation and through speaking engagements and everything. So thank you guys for just carrying the fire of God and just not letting it be diminished by anything. You guys are seriously such an inspiration, and we're so thankful for you guys, proud of you guys, and just believe in you.
Well, we love you all. We're so glad we get to call you friends and people who we deeply respect. And we're just cheering you all on. We're cheering you all on. And we can't wait to be there for opening weekend of Oasis City Church. Next year, it's going to be a party. It's going to be an absolute party. Friends, thank you so much for joining us for another week of the Generation Next show. Hey, if you thought this conversation was valuable, we would love to invite you to share this with your community, with some people who you want to plant a church with, or if there's somebody in your life who you thought, man, I think they're called to plant a church, they just don't know it yet. This is a great way to spark that inside of them. So go ahead and share this, and it gears them up to join us for the rest of this series. There's going to be a few weeks where we're off over the next couple of weeks for some exponential events that we're a part of, regional events and other exciting gatherings. But over the next couple months, we're going to be gathering with 4 different couples who are planting churches all over the country. So don't forget to join us back here for those. It's going to be so great.
Yeah, can't wait to see you all there.
That's right. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Landon, Brooke, we love you guys. We'll talk so soon. Everyone back here for another show in the next couple weeks. See ya.